Good evening, dear dreamer. Settle in. Let your pillow cradle the weight of your head and allow your shoulders to melt toward the mattress. The day can loosen its laces now. There is nowhere you must be except here, in this gentle story and in the quiet rhythm of your own breath. In through the nose, a soft sip of air. Hold for a calm heartbeat. Out through the mouth, a warm ribbon of breath. Again, slow and easy, inhale and exhale. If you like, rest one hand over your chest and one hand over your belly. Feel the quiet rise, the quiet fall. Nothing to force. Like a small tide polishing a moonlit shore. Shh. Now, with your breathing unhurried, the story opens on a winter night. The town was small enough that the sound of a ladle tapping a pot in one kitchen could be heard faintly by a neighbor across the lane. The houses were sewn close together, their roofs stitched with frost. The river, shallow and serious, slid around the town's edge with a hush that never seemed to stop. Or perhaps that was only the kind of silence that grows in winter, a silence that gathers at the corners and under the eaves like soft snow. On the square, a blacksmith's forge glowed, not with the clangor of day, but with the hush of embers awake past their bedtime. The anvil rested, a dark shape beneath a hanging lantern. No hammers lifted, no sparks leaped. In the doorframe, taking in the night like a slow draught, stood a young blacksmith named Arlen. He was more patient than strong, though he was strong enough, and he carried his strength the way a quiet man carries a secret, gently, without hurry. He had left the coals banked, a soft red heart under ash, and stepped into the open air to cool his hands and his thoughts. The sky was a slate bowl, and somewhere very high the stars were fixed like tiny rivets. Arlen could feel the night on his skin, that crisp, mint-bright feeling of winter that seems to clean the breath as it goes in. He drew it in slowly, just as you are doing now, and let it out as a thread of steam. The lane beyond the forge was empty. Fresh powder made the world softer, edges blunted, footsteps kindly. As he walked a little way, boots whispering against snow, his eyes noticed a peculiar light at the far end of the lane, where the baker's fence met a cluster of bare lilac bushes. It was not the prick of a star on ice. It was warmer, steadier, like a candle made of sun. Arlen felt no rush, only a curious warmth in his chest. Not excitement exactly, but a gentle leaning toward the glow. He rounded the fence corner and knelt. There, against the white, lay a feather. It was not large, not so large as a hawk's, not so small as a sparrow's. It glowed from within, gold as summer wheat bending in a noon wind. The light pulsed faintly, like a sleeping thing's breath. And even in that cold, Arlen felt warmth rising from it, just a whisper of heat, enough to take the sting from the air. He reached out. His hands were the hands of a smith, steady, careful with hot metal, careful with tools that would rather bite if mishandled. He cupped the feather as if cupping water. It was weightless, or nearly so, and yet it had a presence, a gentle hum he could sense more than hear, the way one senses a cat purring from another room. He brought it closer, and the gold deepened, painting his knuckles with honey and his breath with warm mist. A feather, he thought. From what bird? No bird he knew. The edges of its barbs were bright, as if stitched with fine threads of sunlight. When he turned it slightly, the light followed his movement, as if greeting him. He felt, in the small private room of his heart, a door open to an unworded knowing, a certainty that this feather was not for keeping as one keeps a coin or a tool. It was a gift that would ask to be given again. He slipped it into the pocket of his wool coat, where it rested against the lining and warmed the cloth, then his chest. The warmth was not hot, not the rough heat of the forge, but a living gentleness, deep and steady. He drew in a breath and felt it travel farther into him, as if the feather had smoothed the path. Back in the forge, Arlen swung the door softly and latched it against the night. The embers watched him like patient eyes. He set water to warm on the small iron kettle that lived on the side of the coals, the place where water took its time and never boiled over. He spooned in clove and a sliver of dried orange peel, and the air sweetened, the spice uncoiling in slow ribbons. As he waited, he touched the feather again. Still warm, still gold under the pocket's modest darkness. He sat on the stool by the anvil and let his gaze unfocus on the curve of metal, the stories etched into it by years of work. small crescent marks where horseshoes were rounded into grace, flat patches where plowshares learned strength, faint lines where delicate hinges were coaxed into moving like thoughts. Tonight no hammer would fall. The town slept. The river folded and unfolded its song. There was someone he thought of, as he always did when the world grew most quiet. Her name was Lisa. She lived 3 doors down in a house whose window boxes in summer were forests of thyme and purple alyssum. In winter, she tied small woolen scarves around the boxes as if tucking them in. She was the kind of person who understood how to warm a room without throwing extra logs on the fire. She warmed spaces by noticing them, by placing a chair so it faced the sunrise, by leaving a book open to a good page, by laughing softly at just the right moment. The laugh sends out a little silver circle of light. Arlen and Lisa were not urgent in their affection. They did not race toward a future with big gestures. They walked together down to the river sometimes. They tasted the baker's first cinnamon buns of autumn in the alley where the heat tasted sweet. They carried each other's quiet. When Lisa fell silent, Arlen did not pry it open with questions. He put the kettle on and let the quiet steep. And when Arlen grew a little far away inside himself, Lisa did not fetch him back with noise. She set an orange peel by his elbow and waited, and soon the fragrance would reel him in. He poured the tea now and touched the rim of the clay mug with the back of his finger, the way his mother had taught him long ago. Listen to the heat before you sip. The scent rose, clove and orange, warm and reassuring. He imagined Lisa's hands wrapped around such a mug, the way her knuckles would bloom pink as the heat moved in. He thought of how she always offered the first sip to him with that little look, as if she were sharing not just tea, but a hearth. The feather hummed, not so that his ears could name it, but so that his bones could understand it. He lifted it into the forge light and turned it slowly. Gold flowed along its veins like morning across a field. A small stream of warmth bathed his wrist. It felt oddly like a memory, some echo of standing in a doorway where sun and shade meet, of handing your last slice of bread to a friend and finding your hunger softened anyway. He did not know how the feather had come to the town. Rumors grew like ivy in the lanes. A traveling singer had seen a firebird wheel above the river at dusk. A shepherd had found a circle of ashes on the hill, but no wood charred there. A child had dreamed of a golden wing brushing the rooftops. Stories are like embers. If you blow on them, they glow. Arlen let the rumors drift through his mind and out again, like smoke through a net. He did not need the explanation to be large. The feather was already enough. He drank his tea down to warmth and set the mug aside. Then he wrapped the feather in a square of soft linen he kept for polishing, folding it as carefully as one folds a promise. In the linen the light dulled to a tender glow, and the warmth held, pressing gently against his palms. Lysa, he thought. The way her smile made winter evenings feel like rooms with an extra window. The way she had once, without comment, mended the little tear in his coat pocket, so that for months he discovered no coins slipping through. The way she walked slowly on purpose when the road was pretty. If ever there were a thing made to be given, it would be this. He blew out the lantern and, for a moment, let the forge be only a dim red heartbeat in the corner. The door sighed when he opened it. Outside, snow had laid a fresh page over the lane. The light from houses had thinned to slits. Most were dark now, sleeping. He tucked the linen bundle near his heart. There was no need to wait for morning. Winter nights in a small town are gentle. They don't mind a guest at a late hour, especially a guest who walks softly and carries something that feels like sunrise. He took a step, then another, letting his boots write their slow script in the new snow. The town smelled of pine and faint smoke and something sweet. The baker's dreams, perhaps, sifting through shutters. Arlen counted his breaths without counting, letting each one lead him toward the next. You might do the same. In, like drawing the feather's warmth to you. Out, like giving a little of that warmth back to the sleeping world. In, out, no hurry. The river kept its hush, hush beside him. The stars arranged themselves like bright, kind pins. He paused under the lilac bushes by Lysa's gate, bare branches wearing small caps of snow. He could see, through her front window, the banked glow of her hearth, and on a small table a bowl of winter apples. The sight of it, the ordinariness, the tenderness, placed his heart precisely where it belonged. He lifted his hand to knock, then let it fall. Not yet. He stood quietly, feeling the feather's warmth seep through wool and skin, and into the quiet house beyond the door, as if the gift had already begun to arrive even before it was given. He smiled to himself, and the smile warmed the cold from the air between him and the wood. Inside his pocket the feather glowed. He thought, without feeling any need to be right, that he knew its name. Not the name someone else would give it, not the name written in old books, but the name it had told his palms, a phoenix feather, a thing that remembers warmth even when the world is cold, a thing that carries the thread of renewal back through winter's weave. He rested one more breath at the threshold and listened to the soft knock of his heartbeat. Then, with the patience of a man tempering a blade, he lifted his hand again. But that is where the introduction must slow, and the world must linger just before the door opens, because pausing can be its own kind of warmth. If you're listening, let your breath find that pause too. In, hold, and out. Feel your hands soften. Feel your chest ease. The town is quiet. The night is kind. In the hush between one knock and the next, the story holds all the light it needs. The door opened before his knuckles touched the wood. Lysa had a way of sensing a presence at her threshold, as if the house itself breathed with her. She stood in the warm wash of lamplight, wrapped in a shawl the color of toasted oats, hair gathered low at the nape in a loose ribbon. Her smile didn't start at her mouth. It began in her eyes and traveled slowly, kindly across her face. "Arlen," she said, voice soft as a comforter drawn up under the chin. "The night is cold. Come in." He stepped inside. The air carried cinnamon and beeswax and a faint drift of pine from a small branch standing in a jar on the mantel. Beneath those scents was the quiet, clean fragrance that belonged only to this house, to this woman, a scent like freshly folded linen and a page turned at the right time. Arlen closed the door with care. The latch made a wooden hush. He loosened his scarf. From the hearth came a companionable murmur, a steady ember chorus that hummed close to the place in him the feather warmed. He pressed the linen bundle to his chest a moment longer, honoring the pause, the space a gift makes around itself. Lysa's eyes took in the small square of folded cloth. She didn't ask, not right away. She set 2 mugs by the fire and filled them from the kettle that had kept patient company while she read. Steam rose, silky and slow. She handed one cup to Arlen and wrapped her hands around the other, the way one might hold a bird, offering warmth without grasping. They sat. The chairs had known their shapes for years, and creaked a greeting. Outside the window, snow fell the way feathers fall, in a pillow fight imagined rather than played. Slow motion, soundless. The world was tucked in. I was walking, Arlen said, and the night handed me something. He placed the linen on the low table and opened it corner by corner, the way he might open a letter from a dear friend. Gold breathed out into the room. Not bright, the light was gentle, shy even, but sure. It washed the wood-grain honey, tipped Lisa's eyelashes with a fine thread of dawn. The warmth of it joined the hearths, not competing, simply adding its note to the chord. "Oh," Lisa whispered. Not a question, a recognition, as if she had known such light once in a dream and remembered it now with her hands. She leaned closer, then steadied, eyes soft and attentive. "It feels kind." Arlen nodded. "The night was not so cold when it came near me." He told her of the lane and the lilacs and the little hum that didn't quite meet the ear. He told her about the way it had warmed the cloth, and through the cloth, him. He didn't say the word he held in his chest, though it sat there, bright as a coal. Phoenix. Lisa listened the way she did everything, fully, with nothing hurried. She placed one palm near the feather, hovering, allowing the warmth to meet her halfway. Her shoulders softened. Her breath let go of a small stone he hadn't known it was carrying. "Some things," she murmured, "teach the body to remember. The smell of rain on dust, the sound of a cart on cobbles. This has that feeling." "It does," Arlen said. He watched the light travel across the curve of her cheek, the tiny glint it set in her hair ribbon, the way the air between them seemed to smooth. The feather made everything feel nearer to its best. He had thought of how to give it to her as he crossed the lane, and considered words that might match the gift. But now, with the feather on the table and the room breathing with it, he understood that words were not required to carry this across. He lifted the feather. It was weightless as a vow. He turned to Lisa and placed it very carefully in her open hands. Warmth unfurled like dawn over a meadow. Light deepened, pooling in the hollows of her fingers, sketching a gold outline along her nails. Lisa's breath came in. Her eyes softened and then grew bright. She held the feather the way one holds a memory that arrives unannounced and sits down at the table, familiar and welcome. "Thank you," she said. And the thanks was not only for the feather. It was for the way Arlen had carried it, and for the way he carried her quiet, and for the way the world sometimes chose to reveal its small magics when one walked slowly enough. And then, as easily as a candle accepts the flame of another candle and becomes indistinguishable from it, the feather began to dim. The gold drew itself inward, not vanishing so much as traveling. The barbs softened their shine, their edges folding toward the central quill, as if listening to a far-off call. The warmth flowed, not away, but through Lisa's palms, across her wrists, into the rooms of her arms, into her chest, into her steady heart. Arlen saw it in the tiny release of her shoulders, in the quieting of the line between her brows, in the way the room's shadows relaxed like cats. The feather thinned to a breath of light, and then, with no drama, with no pop or display, it was no longer there. The linen lay open and empty. The table held only the two mugs and a pale circle of warmth, like sunlight remembered on a wooden floor. They sat for a long moment, hands cradling heat. Lisa's fingers flexed once, gently, as if greeting the space the feather had left behind. She placed her palm over her heart. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Arlen lifted his own hand to his chest. The warmth that had sat against his coat was now fuller, deeper, quieter. It did not hover at the surface. It lived down where his breath began. It felt like an ember that knew its work, not to blaze, but to remain. "Yes," he said, and the word seemed to hum in tune with the thing they both felt. They sipped their tea. It tasted more itself than it had a moment before. Clove was clove. Orange was orange. Warmth was warmth. "Once," Lisa said, voice drifting like smoke, "my grandmother told me a story. She said there are birds you don't see so much as you sense, birds that fly in the seam between night and morning. They leave small traces the way kindness leaves traces. A stitched hem on a coat, a neighbor's path shoveled before you wake, a hush arriving in a room. She said, if such a bird leaves a feather, it will not stay long. The feather chooses a heart to live in." Arlen listened. The story fit around what had happened, the way a well-made glove fits a hand, snug, not tight. He allowed himself to think the word fully now, to set it on the table beside the empty linen. Phoenix, a bird whose end is a beginning. A creature that dissolves into ash and returns with a new morning in its wings. He did not reach for the ash part of the story. There was no burning here, no smoke, only warmth that grew gentler as it deepened. They spoke for a while, differently than before, the kind of talk that wanders like a river in winter, not rushing to any cliff, simply curving around whatever the land offers. They named the small ways warmth had already begun to show itself. The room felt larger, though no wall had moved. The crackle of the hearth had a low note neither had heard earlier, a contented Even the ticking of the mantel clock seemed to lose its edge, rounding into a friendly thock, 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 that kept time without pressing on it. Outside, the town received its share. Breath left the windows in softer clouds. A dog sleeping under a table twitched once in a dream, and then settled more deeply. Somewhere a baby's cry rose, folded on itself, and returned to sleep. The feather's warmth, now heart warmth, did not stay confined. Good things rarely do. In the days that followed, nothing spectacular happened. The world did not announce the gift with trumpets or banners. Arlen went to the forge as he always did. Lisa went to the market, to her work mending books and binding them back into themselves so others could find their way through words. But in the weave of hours, threads of gold appeared. A man who sometimes scowled at the price of nails found himself, inexplicably, in better humor, and left a coin on the counter for the apprentice who swept. The baker's buns were no sweeter than usual, but somehow they tasted more like comfort. He began to wrap an extra in brown paper for the widow on the corner, and never charged her for it. The postwoman, whose route led her past the river, paused one morning and listened long enough to hear the part of the river's song that sounded like quietly laughing. She arrived at her last door ahead of her mood. Arlen noticed that his temper, which was never fierce, but could grow tight when a hinge refused to move true, loosened more quickly, the way stiff metal loosens when warmed in the palm. He found himself humming, low, tuneless, grateful, as he sanded a handle smooth. He made a small hook, unasked, for the door of the apothecary, because he had noticed Lisa catching her sleeve on the rough nail there. He walked it over in his lunch hour and installed it, and the apothecary smiled with half his face, more than he had smiled in months. Lisa noticed the way people breathed around her now. A woman in the market who often rushed her words slowed and finished a sentence with a little sigh of relief. A boy, older than childhood, but not yet across the bridge of youth, returned a borrowed book, and instead of leaving it on the step, handed it to Lisa and waited for her to say thank you. He seemed to like being thanked gently. At night, when Arlen and Lisa walked along the river's hush, they felt the warmth as a companionable presence. It did not surge, it did not ebb, it abided. They spoke of small plans, of lining the window boxes with fresh moss in spring, of teaching the apprentice to listen to metal before asking it to bend, of carrying tea in lidded jars to watch the thaw. The warmth gave their plans the feeling of seeds held in a palm, not yet planted, but already promising a shape. One afternoon, snow softened into sleet, and sleet into a fine rain that wrote silver letters on the lane. Arlen closed the forge early and went to Lisa's. She met him at the door with a towel, and he laughed into it as she swept the rain from his hair. He had brought a small box, oak, with a lid that slid home soundlessly. Inside lay nothing but a cushion of blue cloth. "What is this for?" Lisa asked, smiling. "A place for keeping things that cannot be kept," Arlen said. He set the box on her table. "We can put the linen in it if you like. And if ever we find a feather again, or any small warmth that wants to visit, we can give it a proper resting place, even if it doesn't stay." Lisa touched the lid, slid it back and forth, listened to its whisper. "Yes," she said, "a treasury for moments." They placed the folded linen inside. The box sat where the morning light would find it. It was empty in the way a hearth is empty between fires, not lacking, just ready. That night, the warmth in their chests hummed like a low chord shared between two instruments tuned to the same note. Neither spoke of forever. They did not need the word. The feeling was steadier than speech. When they parted at her door, their hands lingered in that simple, human way that makes promises without thread or ink. If you are listening with the lights low, notice your own hands now, how they rest, how they know where to be. Let your shoulders remember the shape of ease. In and out. Let the breath place a small ember, tidy and kind, in the quiet room of your heart. No need to hold it tight. Warmth knows how to remain. As winter dipped its brush and painted the edges of days a little longer, the town went about its gentle business. The box on Lisa's table held the linen and the space where light had been, which is to say, it held the light. The forge's smoke rose straight on windless mornings. The river kept its hush and found new notes as ice released its rim. The feather did not return as a feather. It had done what it came to do. One evening, as the sky put on its blue shawl, and the first star riveted itself to the seam of dusk, Arlen took a length of iron from the coals and hammered it, slow, slow, not for any order, not for sale. He shaped a small loop, then a curve, then another, coaxing the metal to resemble a line of flight, the way a child draws a bird, two soft arcs touching at the middle. He cooled it in water. The steam rose with a s. He polished it with the linen's twin, and when it shone, he slipped it into his pocket and walked 3 doors down. Lysa met him with the now familiar warmth already greeting them at the threshold. Arlen placed the small iron bird in her palm. It was cool from the walk, but as her hand closed around it, it took on the room's temperature, then the hands, then something deeper. "For your box," he said. Lysa placed the bird inside, next to the folded cloth. "For our treasury," she corrected softly, and smiled. And somewhere far above the town, or maybe very near, the seam between night and morning fluttered once, as if a great wing passed through it, leaving behind only what wings always leave when they do their work well, a quiet and a readiness for dawn. If you wish, let your breath lengthen again. In through the nose, hold, and out through the mouth, a warm ribbon. The main part of our story has come to rest. What remains is only to drift down into sleep, where warmth knows your name and stays. Good evening again, dear dreamer. The story has set its tools down. The forge glows in the background of your mind. Lysa's small oak box is closed, and the river continues its hush, hush along the town's edge. All the important things have happened, quietly, kindly, and now there is nothing left to do but rest. Let your jaw loosen just a little. Let your tongue soften from the roof of your mouth. The muscles around your eyes can release, as if someone has smoothed a thumb across a page and pressed out the tiny creases. Your breath, too, can be easy. In, a small sip of air, cool and clear. Hold, like pausing with your hand on a warm door frame. Out, a slow ribbon, warm, unspooling. If a thought tries to hurry you, imagine setting it down on Lysa's table, next to the little iron bird. It can rest there. You can come back to it in the morning, and it will be lighter after having slept. Outside, the town is tender at night. The roofs are tucked under their white quilts. A late flake or two drifts past the lamplight, turning once, twice, then disappearing into the soft. Somewhere the baker is already dreaming of flour, and the postwoman is wrapped in the kind of sleep that knits small holes in the day closed. The clock on the mantel continues its friendly thock, thock, But even that is far away now, as if wrapped in felt. Bring your attention very gently to your shoulders. Imagine the phoenix warmth, the feather's gift that moved inward and learned your heartbeat, settling there like a shawl. It's not hot. It's the sort of warmth that remembers summer, but behaves politely in winter. Your shoulders lengthen away from your ears. The small cords at the base of your neck unknot, one by one, like threads sliding free when a seam is let out. Let the warmth flow down your arms, to the bend of your elbows, to your wrists, to the heels of your hands. It pools softly in the hollow of each palm, as if two small embers were resting there, content and safe. Perhaps your fingers tingle a little. Perhaps they feel heavy, sweetly heavy, as if a friendly cat has curled there. If you wish, you can make the smallest movement, thumb to forefinger. And then let stillness return. Now, the warmth moves to your chest. Imagine the golden hum that Lysa felt, quiet, steady, settling behind your breastbone. Each breath gathers that gentle heat and spreads it in a thin, comforting veil across your ribs, like the finest wool laid smoothly over a sleeping child. Between your ribs, between the beats of your heart, there is so much space for rest. In your mind, open the door to Arlen's forge one last time. The embers are banked, a deep red sea with islands of glow. The tools hang quietly, each one content to be unused. On the side of the coals, the kettle hums to itself, never boiling, always ready. You sit on the familiar stool. The anvil is only a silhouette, a faithful friend at ease. The air smells of clean iron and a thread of orange peel, and beneath that, the faintest sweetness, beeswax on old wood, memory on air. Every breath in is the hush of the river through town. Every breath out is the soft glow of the hearth. In, hush. Out, glow. If your mind offers you the word phoenix now, let it perch for a moment, and then fold its wings. Not a bird to flare or shout. Tonight it is only the suggestion of a wing, a presence that reassures the dark, that morning will come, without alarms, without urgency, when it is ready. We will gather the body into rest, the way one tucks a room in for the night. Start at the crown of your head. Imagine the warm gold brushing there, a single bright thread drawing a circle, smoothing the scalp, easing any places that held the day. The thread descends to your forehead, unwriting any furrows, softening the bridge of your nose, resting over your cheeks like early sunlight through thin curtains. Your lips can part the smallest bit. Your jaw floats. Your throat is a slow stream, water moving around smooth stones without hurry. The warmth travels to your back, between the shoulder blades, down along the long muscles that work when you are upright. They are off duty now. Think of Arlen hanging his apron on its peg. That same feeling. The spine rests, soft as a balanced stack of library books on a trusted shelf. Each vertebra says thank you and quiets. In the belly, the warmth is kindest of all. It does nothing but invite. It is a small kitchen at midnight, with a candle and a clean cup. It says, stay as you are. It says, nothing is required. Your breath can reach this room and set a tiny saucer spinning, lazy and content. Hips become heavy, the good kind of heavy, like stones that keep a path true. Thighs unclasp, knees release, calves smooth out their long seams, ankles let go of remembering the day's shoes. The feet, those faithful travelers, widen and soften, as if placed close to a fire just warm enough to comfort. The 10 small travelers at their ends, your toes, can sigh. Perhaps they do. Perhaps they whisper shh to one another and are quiet. The town outside is a chorus of rest. A sign hangs still. A shutter leans without creak. A cat drops into its deeper sleep, the one with no twitch, no chase, only purr. And in Lisa's house, the small oak box breathes the slightest puff of wood scent into the air. Inside it, the folded linen keeps the shape of a vanished light, the way a shoreline keeps the memory of a wave. Let's count, softly, like steps from the hearth to the bed in a familiar room. If you lose the count, smile. You can always begin again, and beginning again is another kind of rest. 10. A warm glow under the coals, steady. 9. A chair that fits you and you alone. 8. The river's hush, a blanket for the town. 7. A mug cooling on a table, patience in clay. 6. The feather's warmth, now your own. 5. Breath in, hush. Breath out, glow. 4. The little iron bird, quiet in its box. 3. Snow at the window, soft as sleep. 2. Your heart, a calm lantern. 1. You, tucked in. If a stray sound reaches you, a distant car, a murmur from another room, let it be the mantel clock, wrapped in felt, keeping kind time. If a stray thought arrives, what to do tomorrow, who to write, what to mend, Hand it your shawl and invite it to doze by the fire. You will meet it in the morning, refreshed. Tonight there is only warmth. The phoenix feather has always been a lesson in gentle abundance. It did not stay as itself. It became the space it entered. It became Lisa's unhurried breath, Arlen's patient hands, the baker's extra bun, the postwoman's pause by the laughing river. It becomes now your rest. It is the warmth that does not ask you to hold it tightly. It knows how to remain. If you like one last feather once more, not to bring it back, but to watch it finish its work. See it as a fine brushstroke of gold, fading not into nothing, but into everything. Your ribs, the quilt, the air, the room, the night sky pinned with rivets of star. Even the darkness takes on a tender glow from it, the way black velvet shows its depth better under a soft lamp. Your breathing now is almost invisible, the kind of breath you might give to keep a candle lit without disturbing the flame. In, a hush. Out, a glow. Your body knows what to do. You can let it. You are held by the mattress and the blanket and the night itself, which is very good at holding. If you desire one last picture to carry you over the threshold of sleep, return to the river path. Arlen and Lisa have already gone home. The snow shows their paired footprints side by side, narrowing into the dark like two lines that agree. Above the path, a single feather of cloud crosses the moon, and then thins to nothing. The moon accepts this with grace. The river continues its hush, its lullaby for stones. You stand, but you are also already lying down. You listen, but you are also already dreaming. You are a warm room in winter, a kettle humming on the coals, a box waiting for light that has already arrived and made itself at home. The world will turn the page for you. In, hold, out. In, hold, out. Your hands are warm. Your chest is easy. Your face is calm. The story has curled itself into a small, sleeping shape at the foot of your bed. It will be here if you wake in the night, ready to breathe with you once or twice and guide you back. It will be here in the morning, too, bleached to a soft memory like winter sunlight on a floor, pleasant, unassuming. For now, drift, down through the quiet layers, roof, sky, star, down through the quilt, the mattress, the slow, sweet gravity of rest, down to the ember that never needs tending because it tends you. The phoenix does not fly off. It perches in your pulse and sings the faintest song, a lullaby below hearing, exactly the right size. Sleep takes your hand. The town nods. The river hushes. The feather glows within you, feels you smiling, and smiles back. If a feather can smile, and tonight it can. Good night, dear dreamer. Sleep warm.